Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in to the Effort of Community Church weekly podcast, a conversation with our pastors and leaders meant to continue encouraging you to know God, know freedom, know purpose, and make a difference.
Hey, Effort of Community Church, great to be with you. Hope you're having a great week, or the week's off to a great start. I'm here with Wes Siegrist, who executive pastor of operations.
Whatever.
I know exactly. I feel the same.
You say usually Wes when I show up.
I know. My title went up on the board the other day, and it was so scary long. It made me feel responsible, like I'm not getting something done.
Well, you have lots of other letters behind your name, Jim, which I'm still trying to figure out.
Me too. Trust me, and pay for. But all that to say, it's good to be with Wes.
Yeah, it's good to meet you, Jim.
Just to remind you, we were in our God Is series, which I think I'm hearing from many people in the congregation how much they're enjoying it. And I think it has to do with the personal stories that are linked to it. Just a reminder that we felt coming out of the Gospels last year, where we just looked at the life of Jesus. And then with what we had happen at the end of last year, where the presence of the Lord just was among us. And so we thought, what do you do next, man? We decided, let's just sit with the character of God in our midst. And this God Is series was thought up where we also noticed that God is oftentimes in the scriptures named by what he's done in people's lives, right? And then we had people like Hagar saying, God is the God who sees me. And then the wonderful stuff you did. So I just like to always recap. We had Kevin sitting and saying, God is provider. We had Dan saying, the God who sees me. We had Matt saying, the God who is good father. And then you with, just love it, God as healer. And you particularly focused in on emotional healing.
Yeah, I did.
You told us a wonderful story. Thanks so much for opening up on that.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. Well, it's a joy, obviously, to be a part of what God's doing here in this community, and even hearing stories of people referencing attributes that we even haven't talked about yet, right? And so it's just cool to see the Spirit sharing that within our church community, and it's fun.
We have more coming up. We're going to be doing this all the way through March and into April. Matter of fact, we've decided not to even set an end on this one.
Yeah, that's right.
I hope that doesn't unsettle anyone. We know that as long as the Lord continues to lead us in these moments, we're going to continue to talk about it. But today we're going to talk about the journey of emotional healing, and particularly hurt coming from people that, in a sense, you trust.
Yeah.
Yours had to do with a church community that you thought that you had reached a level of intimacy with, and track record with, that you could do some hard stuff in that community to begin to address some stuff. And it just didn't go that way, right?
No,
but
it didn't go that way.
I also reminded, like when I was hearing you speak, it wasn't just about a church community, it's when an intimate community that you thought you trust.
Right.
Some people could be sitting and thinking their families, like I thought our family reached the point where we were ready to address something historically. Matter of fact, there's a family in our community that called together all the brothers and sisters to address a historical thing because they felt that they were ready to do that. And it was a rough ride when they started to do it recently. And so, I just want to say that there is no doubt that one of the things that I wanted to make sure we spent some time on is when those that you think you are trusting most deeply wound us, right? Yeah. And that's a big deal.
It is, Jim. And, through my own journey and then journeying with many others, I realized how much trust is a gift. Yeah. When you give the gift of trust to somebody and then it doesn't, it's either shattered or it's taken or you feel like it's destroyed or not honored.
That's right.
It comes back to you. And now you have another option sometime in your future. What am I going to do with that gift of trust again? Am I going to trust this, person? Am I going to trust this community? And so there's these safeguards that get built around us. And, I'm not a counselor or therapist, but there's so many mechanisms and coping things that we do to kind of begin then to pull back from community or pull back from individuals or pull back from things. And we kind of self-isolate around that. And, while I recognize that's a safety mechanism, I recognized even my own journey, it's not healthy.
Yeah, that's right.
And it takes us to unhealthy places. So I'm just thankful for a believing community, for a faith community. I'm grateful for good counselors and spiritual directors and people that can just listen and be a friend.
That's right.
Because that's so important in our healing journey.
I you use the word journey twice there in that section, and that's the word I want to move in on, because I'm pretty convinced, and we think we know this from the clinical field as well, that when you've been hurt by someone that you trusted more deeply. And it's one thing to be hurt by someone at work that you barely know.
Right.
And they might just be
low relationship.
Exactly.
Right.
Relationship level. It's quite different when you have established relationship, much less potentially even intimate, meaning
Yeah.
you've committed to certain aspects of the relationship. And then it happens. And I want to talk about that. That healing from that is a journey. In other words,
Yes.
they've shown that
Yes.
like the body keeps the score. Years later, you might have even done forgiveness work, or you might even done some what's called rupture and repair work.
Yeah.
But
I
it's
like
strange.
that.
Even the time of year that it happened,
Yeah.
you will notice
Yeah.
a temptation toward sadness or
Yeah.
feeling misunderstood elsewhere
Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
That it is a long journey
Yeah.
when you have been hurt by someone who you trusted deeply or something like that.
That's
It's
exactly
just
right.
it's just part of it. So I do want to say how much I appreciated one of your opening points in your message was, this is a journey. This is not just a climactic breakthrough moment. You may get a climactic breakthrough, but you will have to walk in it for a very long time afterwards. And so I have to ask you, like, do you still feel some of that too, where you get tempted to regress? Not so much regress, but you're tempted by some of the very things that you were hurt in before.
Yeah, I think the further you get from the event and from the pain as you process it, I think the less that happens. So where I am today, I don't know that I would experience that as much as I would have, like 2, 3, 4, 5 years kind of out from that. So you're right, the body does keep the score in many ways. But I also, one of the other things I said this weekend is our emotions and this emotional pain and stuff that we carry. And I realize, man, people are carrying some deep stuff, hurts from family and just broken relationships and strange stuff. I mean, my heart goes out to those. And obviously I touched on church pain because while we'd wish that was never happening, right? We all acknowledge that it does. It really does. And because people are involved, right? But one of the things, as I said this weekend, is either, our pain will either be a prison, a jail that will imprison us and like keep us to ourselves, or it can be a school that empowers us. And for me, learning that pain can be a school was helpful. Just the other day, I was chatting with my son. He's a junior in college, and he's like, I'm tired of school. He's been in school all of his life, right? So you're at this place of like, hey, I've been in the classroom. I'm ready for a new beginning. I'm ready for something new and different. It might feel like jail to him. It's not, obviously, but he recognizes a season of life and there's a new beginning coming. And I just wanted to impart that hope this weekend, that journey, process, working through it, learning, growing, forgiving. I mean, all of that is it's not just one thing. And there are triggers along the way where you think like, oh, I've forgiven Jim. And then Jim said something and he, I'm making this up, by the way. But those kind of things are triggered. But the triggers that happen, like you don't plan for it, right? And so, but being self-aware, again, we've talked about different times, knowing your EQ versus your IQ, right? Your emotional intelligence is just so helpful because God does a deep work in us because he loves us.
That's right.
And not because he's mad or not because he's angry. And we do stupid stuff sometimes. I mean, we say things or act certain ways that, we need to take responsibility for. Nonetheless, there are learning opportunities, I think, in the school of hard knocks, as we often refer to.
Yeah, and we're constantly in it being perfected. Partly maybe I'll be more clear about my question. Not that you didn't address it, but so I had a very surprise and traumatic emotional pain carried out on me in January many years ago, 7, 8 years ago. And I have to tell you, I find that whenever January rolls around, I will notice that I start to worry about whether people who are close to me are not telling me what they really think. And it hits me around January. So it's an actual temptation, getting back to this, the emotional body keeps the score, emotional intelligence. I even confessed it to Rachel this year because I had this one relationship where I was like, I wonder if, and I just started to ask like, I wonder if they get me, or I wonder if I'm being misunderstood. And I had to say to Rachel, oh my goodness, it is that time of year where I am tempted. It doesn't mean I don't have victory to draw on in Jesus, which I do. And I'm able to, but another piece of thing you shared was tell somebody. So I remember in January this year when this little thing was triggering in me, the first thing I did was I went to my wife, Rachel, and I said, Rachel, this thing, it's just so funny how it comes up annually because of this trauma that happened 8 years ago, right? And so that's another thing I really want to appreciate in what you said was people draw back rather than do the thing of, You know, when James says confess your sins to one another, it's more than just sins there. It's like confess the temptations
That's
toward
right.
even an emotional posture toward
Yeah.
someone.
That's
Confess it,
huge.
get it out, and you can be healed, right?
It's huge. And again, that is not natural.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like you're in that protective mode. And so, I felt like the way Chris even ended the service on Sunday was significant too, where he
Yeah.
said, hey, you may be at a place where you've just like, I don't even want to go back there, right? It's just too painful, or like, I don't want to face it. And I understand that.
That's right.
And yet,
Or is it safe enough to go back to it?
Right.
Is it going to get worse
Right,
if I revisit it?
exactly,
Right. So
exactly.
you reach this point of status quo. By the way, it was a word of knowledge. It came at Sunday at
Sunday.
8:30. And I even went up to Chris. I felt the word was so meaningful that I went up to him between services and said, Chris, that word is for the whole morning.
Yeah,
Deliver it again at
agreed.
10:30, because I just felt there was something on it. And the word had to do with the fact that that we're satisfied with the level of breakthrough or healing we've had around something, but the Lord knows that there's more there. But we oftentimes can get nervous about going back and reopening because we don't know if we'll be stewarded well through it, or if
I think the devil wants
worse
to
to
keep us from
reopen
doing
it.
that, right?
I
I
mean,
mean, there's
from a full healing, right?
from a full
Versus what I
healing,
would call as a maintenance healing,
Yeah.
just to get through it, right?
Yeah.
But all that to say, we believe there was a grace there, and I do believe some people responded. I was able to see some of the feedback we received from the prayer ministry teams, and the Lord was obviously ministering to that. So I do want to pause there for a second and ask feedback that you got, particularly in this God Is series, because the messages are coming out of such personal places for the various front of house people. I want to pay attention to the feedback, because in other words, personal messages, personal stories are connecting with people in a certain level.
Yeah.
What were you hearing back from people? What kind of feedback?
Well, it's what's still fresh, obviously, within the last number of hours coming off the weekend. So I'm still getting emails or text messages, or folks reaching out, phone messages, that sort of thing. Primarily, and even after the service, there was a good bit of feedback. So those that are just walking through stuff in a relationship with spouse or a relationship with kids, to obviously I touched on church pain, so that hit a mark for a number that could just relate. Not maybe in my, again, everybody's circumstances is different, but hurt by the church, hurt by a pastor, or hurt by a leadership team, or hurt by a friend in the church, or I mean, just so I've heard stories of that, and just encouragement and hope for redemption and for God to redeem, what was stolen, or what do I do as a next step? So questions around that. So I was delighted to hear a response of people actually willing to sit with pain.
That's right.
Right? Rather than ignore it. If my knee is giving me pain, I'd prefer ignoring it, because I don't want to go to the doctor, right? But in the long run, if it continues to persist, the body is telling me something, and I need to do something about it. And so it's the same way, I think, in our emotional pain. Back to the body keeps the score, in a sense. And for me, while I don't know that I could put to a specific date or a time, it was the time I made that judgment call and things kind of unraveled. I stayed in that position for almost 1.5 years. So I was attempting to end the best I could in the term that I had agreed to as a pastor in that congregation, and tried to end well and still pastor well. But that was hard.
Yeah, man, dude.
I'm not sure if I would do that again, but nonetheless, I felt like that's what God was asking me to. And
you and I both know.
And He gave a grace for it.
Yeah.
But then after...
God doesn't waste pain.
Right, exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Even you putting yourself in for that extra level of potential toxicity or difficulty over 1.5 years. You might not have done it the same way, but the Lord doesn't waste pain.
He doesn't. He doesn't.
Especially when you're doing it for the good of
And Jim, I don't know all the pieces and everybody's story and everybody, but the little pieces I do know, I also see how God has used, because it wounded others too, right? And so I see some redemptive stories there, and I see some of the seeds of just what God, I believe, desires to bring forth in fruitfulness despite the pain.
That's right. Yeah. And I want to say this too. Wes used a phrase that we believe the Lord spoke over our church several years ago that it comes from the wonderful teachings of Jesus, where he says even a mustard seed, even though it's the smallest of all garden seeds, when it's planted, it grows into one of the largest of all garden plants, and many birds will rest in its branches. And you put that phrase in the 2 times I heard you speak this weekend, and that phrase is the idea that we hope that Ephrata Community Church, because it's a large enough place to, in a sense, stay hidden for a little bit, to not actually get pulled into.
I was here hiding.
Yeah.
I mean, I was one.
I want to, some people, some people can take shots at larger churches. One of the things that a larger church can do is it gives a place for healing, for where you're not getting pulled into automatically have to volunteer here, or serve there, etc. You can actually step back and say, man, I need some time on this. You're one of those people. You rested in the branches.
I did. And we visited a few other churches prior to coming to ECC here, and they were smaller churches, and they're like, hey, oh good, hey, can you serve in youth ministry or do, so it didn't take long for people to recognize gifts or skills or availability, and then we were like free game, if you will, to be used.
And no one was doing anything on purpose, but
right?
Yeah.
But it was a smaller congregations or whatever. But here at ECC, I was able to, like, if I wasn't here on a Sunday,
that's right.
Not everybody missed me,
That's
in the same. And in that season, it was helpful. However, in the big picture, I know that somebody got to know me and I got to know some others, right? And so that's the value of community. But there was a season where it felt good. My family was here. We were here together. We were working in a journey of healing together. We were at different spots and places in that. They seemed to be ahead of me. I was behind in that journey, so it felt. However, it was a place where I could rest.
Yeah.
And that's a key, because you need to find places where you can rest.
Yeah, and I just want to, I'm proud of this community. And in this next phrase, I want to make sure that I don't hold up what I would call pulpit ministry or congregational ministry as the highest of all ministry forms.
Right.
Trust me, we believe in all the 7 spheres of society and ministry callings into all of them. But I will say this, for those who feel called to minister to God's church, to God's people, it's a difficult and challenging place, right? And sometimes you do need times of healing. And so I want to encourage you. We have more pastors, or let's just say pastors, that are taking a break from being congregational ministers in our community than you could ever imagine.
That's right.
And they're resting here. They're finding peace here.
That's right.
I wish I could tell you all the stories of several that have been restored to full-time active ministry, of which you would be a testimony.
Yeah.
And all that to say that I am just really blessed to be a part of a community that's created space for people to come and to be able to sit, reflect, heal, regroup, recalibrate, re-understand their calling in these days.
And they don't need to stay here. Like, our heart is like,
we are deliberate
to be a part of
that
journey. In fact, Teresa and I are leading a connect group around that over the last year. I've just seen a number of leaders just in a process of transition, and just seeing God at work in the midst of that. So yeah, it's a blessing to see, and ECC is a place for that. And so my appeal this weekend, and to even those that are tuning into this podcast, is, everybody has their story and everybody is on a journey, and it's our heart. ECC is not a perfect church. We're a pretty good church.
We're above average.
We're above average. I love how you say that. But a place where it is safe, a place where it's like, man, we're authentic. Like, it's like this wood, like, it's not perfect. Like, it's, reclaimed fence posts, and that's what I am. I'm reclaimed, right? And God's redeemed. He's reclaimed. He's done a new work. And I'm just thankful for that.
You're reused.
That's
right. And we appreciate you as part of
the team. But not retired.
Hey, Wes was one of the first people when I started being brought in as just a couple hour a week consultant almost 8 years ago now. Wes was the first guy I got to spend time with. I have to tell you, I appreciate Wes, and I'm on this team partly because Wes is here. I just know when I see him. I mean it. Yeah, I think if I have not expressed that lately, just let me reiterate it, that I've been around long enough to know that individual talent
is needed, and I don't have it.
is one thing, but it's quite another when
experience
team and everyone understands who they are. I always say this: right people on the bus and the right seats on the bus is an incredibly powerful thing, and I appreciate you and who you are, Wes.
Well, thanks, Jim,
and your journey.
Likewise.
So. Hey, we have a lot coming up in the next few weeks here. We just want to encourage you. Hey, no matter how many years you've been with us, there has been a real major redo of our Connections pathway. It meets the third Saturday of every single month. breakfast is served. If you've done Connections Pathway in the past, I can't encourage you enough. Consider doing it again. Matter of fact, Matt Swords, I was talking to earlier today, ran into a server who's been one of our greeter teams, has been with us for about 18 months. They just love, the husband and wife love being greeters.
Awesome.
And he just asked him like, hey, I haven't missed a Connections Pathway in 18 months. I don't remember seeing you. And they just said like, they sheepishly admitted, we're not even sure what that thing is. So you're going to catch me talking about Connections Pathway a lot in the next couple of months.
It is great. It is a great step.
Oh man, it is. It's really something special.
Yeah.
So we encourage you, if you've not taken part in Connections Pathway, would you do it? I promise you, if it is not a good time, I'm going to give you a Connections Cafe gift card to make up for it.
There you go.
So you just come to me and tell me if it was not a good time. And so we deeply appreciate that. Also, on top of that, we have a marriage conference coming up in April. We're not sure if it's maybe for you. Maybe you want to think about your children. Maybe you want to think about friends. It's going to be the phrase.
It's a Friday. Desmond and Sandy.
And Sandy will be running it. Yeah. Just dear friends of this community, and we know their style, their humor, their approach. Man, it could be even for unbelieving neighbors who you are interested in ministering to in this area.
And it's not for hurting marriages. This is for all marriages.
I'm signing up.
Building up.
That's
exactly.
Right.
I'm signed up.
Rach and I are in Goldstone at this moment, and I'm like,
build your marriage. This is a great opportunity. Friday night and a Saturday morning, I believe.
That's right. And so we can't encourage enough. You check out our website, and you'll find information there. And we deeply appreciate you. We hope you have a great week.
Hey, thanks again for joining us today. We hope that you've been encouraged by listening. You can listen to previous episodes, find additional resources, and of course, learn more about us at EphphatahCommunityChurch.com.